Welcome in. Yeah, there we go. Welcome into a Thursday, December 18th edition of Daily Faceoff Live. Those damn elves are messing with our stream today like they messed with Hut's shirt a couple days ago. But anyways, welcome into the show. Tyler Yaremchuk and Carter Hutton with you. We're live on the Daily Faceoff YouTube, and as always, a presentation of Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Huts, Pat and I were having a little conversation because we're actually in the same room today. How superstitious were you in your career? Did you believe in anything like that? Did you have like a lucky who's-a-ma-call-it or whatever?
Honestly, I trusted routine, man. I was into trying to make sure I had, but I was quick to change things up, right? If things weren't going my way, but I would definitely say I was very routine based. But as I got older, you know what helped me a ton was when I played in the American League. When I was in college, I had all this strict routine. I had to do it. Next thing you know, you're in the American League and you're on a bus in the winter from Rockford to Peoria, and you get hit in a snowstorm and you got 5 minutes before warm-ups, you get off the bus. So you just learn, like, I'm good, I can get through this. So I think that helped me clear those mental blocks that I had. So
you weren't someone that's like, if I don't drink like an orange Gatorade 20 minutes before the game, the ceiling's going to fall on me or something like that?
No, I still have a few games where I played guilty. Trust me, buddy. I still like to have fun. I still lived. It was in moderation. It wasn't sustainable, but we did what we had to do.
Routine over superstition, I think, is like a good, healthy way for an athlete to do it. As a fan, I went through a little bit where, you like, it doesn't matter, but I'll tell you this, as a fan, way more fun to have superstitions than to not have superstitions. Like, do I really think my lucky jersey helps? No, but it's way more fun that if they win, I get to sit there at the end of the night and be like, hell yeah, I wore my jersey that I haven't washed in 6 months. Like, that's why we won.
I used to always joke with fans. We'd go to events or a signing or some sort of thing through the community, and fans would be like, "You guys haven't lost a game since I got my new lucky socks." And I'm like, "Oh, well, I guess I can stop trying now because you got your socks on."
No, fucking rights, you can stop trying. It is 100% on those socks. Again, like, can you sit? Do I actually think any of it matters? No. It is way more fun to like feel like you're in the rhythm a little bit. But I guess that's the difference between someone who's never played professional sports and someone who has. But anyways, I digress on that. We got a lot to get to today on the show. Insider Notebook with Dave Pagnotta. That's coming up as a part of our big segment today. We're going to talk Rasmus Andersson. We're also going to talk about the teams who missed out on Quinn Hughes. And there's one in there that's not just the New Jersey Devils. There's another team who was really in on that. We're going to talk with Dave in a little bit of time. But let's kick things off by talking a bit about what happened last night around the NHL. And how about the Florida Panthers, who seem to be kicking it back into high gear? Not only have the Cats won 3 in a row, but the Florida Panthers have won 5 of their last 6. They beat the LA Kings last night by a score of 3-2. And it was not Sergei Bobrovsky backstopping them either. I'll have more on that in a second. But for a brief moment last night, the Florida Panthers, for the first time all season, were in a playoff spot. They got bumped out because the Devils won their late game. But Huts, are you, I guess two-parter here, like, were you ever truly concerned about the Panthers? And part B, are you declaring them back?
I think I did declare them back. You know what I mean? Where they're at. And I think for them, 18-13-2 in an Eastern Conference where not a lot of points separate teams, right? You look from 1 through 5th, it's only 3 points. So you could win 2 games, lose 2 games. It's going to be that dance, I think, for a long time coming in the Atlantic. But for Florida, this is a good situation, right? You're starting to find ways to win hockey games, and you're still missing a few of your stars, which I think is going to be important. It's going to be a shot in the arm. And I think there is help is coming is the important factor here. But what I do think is reassuring is the fact that you've had guys like Sam Bennett, who's at 11 now, Carter Verhaeghe, Anton Lundell, each have 11 goals, 27 points for the last 2. And then you have Brad Marchand, who's been absolutely awesome. So I feel like it has been a bit of a stopgap to get you back to healthy. And goaltending, it is what it is, right? Sergei Bobrovsky, we touched on this the other day, and I think he's going to play less, right? I think that was always the plan with Tarasov coming in there, the younger guy to be his, get mentored by Bobrovsky. Hanging around in this division is the best the Florida Panthers can do right now because they're going to try to peak at the right time when they get to Chuck and Barkov back.
Yeah, what's actually interesting digging into their numbers a little bit, like scoring and creating offense really hasn't been the reason they've lost on a lot of nights. Now, they've had a couple of very high scoring games, like they beat Columbus 7-6 a couple weeks ago that have skewed their numbers a little bit here, but again, they're 11th in offense. They're 19th in goals against. Like, for me to fully declare the Florida Panthers back, and it's great that they can lean on Tarasov a little bit, and Bob doesn't have to play, quite as much. He's only played 23 games so far this season. But for them to be fully back, they have to be the Florida Panthers that defend the way the Florida Panthers do and keep pucks out of their net. And that ties into Bobrovsky and, to an extent, even the blue line. Like, they've dealt with a couple of injuries on the back end. They didn't have, or they still don't have, a guy like Dmitry Kulikov in the lineup. But for me, like, I'm hesitant on the Panthers. Yes, they'll get Matt Tkachuk back eventually. That'll obviously help. A couple of other tertiary characters, we'll call them, on that injured reserve that, again, they'll get back, and that'll help. But I just think for me to fully declare the Panthers back, Huts, I need to get a sense that Sergei Bobrovsky is back to being the Sergei Bobrovsky of old, which, and sorry, I'll say one more thing, not a guarantee. He's 37 years old, Huts.
He is. And that's something that is going to have wear and tear on him. And not just to talk about the age. Look at the games this guy has played over the last 3 years, right? That's 3 Stanley Cup finals, winning 2 of them, and just being involved in that. And yeah, there was a stint where he wasn't very great. It's funny, you look back 3 years ago where Alex Lyon was the goalie to get them in the playoffs. And we sat here on the other side of it, now that I'm a media guy, and we were like, what the hell? You can't pay your goalie $10 million. How do you expect to be good? And then the last 2 years, it's been like, how do we not pay a goalie $10 million? So it's funny how his contract and this last few years has really changed the landscape of how we treat goaltenders and how we think, where it can build your team. So for Bob, I know he is a fitness freak and he takes really, really great care of himself, but nobody's ever beat time, right? Time is going to wear you down. And I think that's where just getting him in a better slot. And this is something I really noticed that the Boston Bruins did with Tuukka Rask later in his career. They went and found goalies to play 40 games for them. They were like, I don't care how good you're playing. You're going to play 40 games and we're going to have you ready for when it matters most. And I think that's what you need to see from Bob at this point.
Absolutely. Again, .888 save percentage on the season for Bob, and he's played a lot of hockey. Pretty funny, that guy in the last 2.5, 3 years has gone from the worst contract, untradeable, no one will touch him, to now we sit here and go, man, I wonder if this guy's a future Hall of Famer, which he very easily could be. But again, I'm not declaring the Cats back until Bob himself is back between the pipes. Let's go from a team that is surging and playing some really good hockey right now to a team that is sputtering, and it's the team the Florida Panthers beat yesterday. Dmitry Filipovic of the PDO cast had a really good tweet that outlined just how much the LA Kings have struggled. They've played 33 games this year, Huts, and in 20 of those 33 games, they've scored 0 or 1 5-on-5 goals. That's basically 66% of their hockey games. They've been held to 1 or fewer goals at 5-on-5. They can't score right now, and there are multiple culprits. And they're getting good hockey out of Darcy Kuemper again, and they're keeping pucks out of their net at a good rate. But if the LA Kings can't score, they're a wild card team now. They're below the Oilers in the standings, which I think a month ago a lot of people wouldn't have really saw coming with how good the Kings looked. But if they can't score, I think they're in danger of this turning into an ugly slide.
Yeah, I think so too. And especially a team that for the last 3 years making the playoffs, feeling like they had potential and then getting squashed out every single year. And the fact that right now the only guys producing for you are Adrian Kempe and Kevin Fiala with 11 and 12 goals respectively, right? When we start to look at some of these other teams that have that superstar power that can generate offense, and this is on a power play that's buzzing at 31st in the NHL, and a team that's under 500 at home, which is, I think, also something to highlight. Being 4-6-4 at home at Crypto.com Arena is worrisome, because last year that was their dojo. Like, you could not go into LA and not expect to try to win a game. It was going to be a hard fight. It's still low scoring at times, like they don't tend to give up a lot, but it is concerning when you look at the factor of what are they going to have to run into if they do get in the playoffs, if they sneak in, and then the matchups you're going to get in the West where you're going to get outscored, right? You can defend. Everybody has good goaltending. Everyone cranks up that side of it. But without that superstar status scoring, I think it's very worrisome for the LA Kings and where they're positioning themselves right now in the standings.
At this point last season, they were 10-2-1 on home ice. So that just, again, illustrates your point that, they are not a scary home team, which they were before. You look at goal scoring, Joel Armia is third on their team with 8 goals. Where's Anze Kopitar? Where's a guy like Warren Fogle, who was good for 20 last season? And if I had to defend them a little bit here, there's a couple of guys who I just think shooting percentage-wise are going to get going a little bit, like Quinton Byfield shooting 5.9%. He's only got 4 goals on the season. I think that's a guy who probably finds his offense at some point and will be more of a driver than he's been to this point. And I looked at some of the numbers at 5-on-5. So they're obviously 31st in 5v5 scoring. They're 16th in 5-on-5 scoring chances generated, though. And if you look at expected goals, they're 20th. So, like, are they so bad that they should be 31st in the league in 5-on-5 scoring? No, their offense should be better than this. Kopitar should score a little more. Byfield should score a little bit more. But that expected goals number isn't 9th. It isn't 10th. It's very, very far from it. Like, even if they were scoring at their expected rate, they're still pretty much damn near bottom third of the NHL. And I see Arthur Staple, this comments from Joe, who mentioned on the Tri-City podcast that maybe LA would be a team that'd be interested in Panarin. And like, that's what this team needs. The only issue is if they're going to get into a bidding war, like, let's go through the Western Conference. We know Minnesota wants to add scoring. We know Winnipeg wants to add scoring. Like, if there's an arms race in the West, they're not going to be the only team who's going out there and improving their offense in the next 2 months.
Well, yeah, and especially the way we're going to look at what free agency happens here, right? With all the talk of like Alex Tuch staying in Buffalo, so you cross him off the board, then who becomes your guy? Yeah. It's Panarin, right? And at his age, like, is he going to really fill that void, right? Like, I think you're going to get maybe 1 or 2 good years out of Panarin, if that. And I think he could add some supplemental scoring. But that being said, you look at this lineup, it does get worrisome, especially depth-wise up the middle. I think Quinton Byfield is there, and I think he will improve. But losing Kopitar is going to be an interesting where that slack gets picked up. And again, you can go for Panarin, but that price come free agency, Ty. I think we'll be working that show again. It might just be a few of us talking that day because these guys are going to take big money, and Panarin's going to sit around and wait, knowing that he holds the keys to the castle in that market.
Yeah, so let's do a little heat check here and do a little rating game. I'm going to throw you a take. You're going to give me a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being you hate it, you disagree with it, 10 being you're in, you do agree with it. So the first one's on the LA Kings. I'll say they have a sub 50% chance of making the playoffs. My logic being, if the scoring doesn't improve, I think at some point Darcy Kuemper will start to show his age a little bit and won't keep giving them, if you want to call it Vezina or close to Vezina caliber goaltending. Sub 50% chance for the LA Kings to make the playoffs, Huts.
Oh man, that's a tough one. I'm gonna say 3. Because I just feel like with this group, there is a lot of experience, and I think they will show through in the fact that they already are pretty good at defending in a tight season. I think as things go, they'll be able to create some sort of offense. And I just think in the Pacific Division, there's a good chance for those teams that they're competing with to hang around, like the Sharks, Mammoth, Blues. The Jets have been on a spuddle. So I do think the Kings are able to hold serve here, but it is very, very concerning in my eyes.
Just quickly, Darcy Kuemper as well placed on IR by the LA Kings with an upper body injury. If you saw the collision with Mikko Rantanen, I think we can all conclude what that upper body injury is. Again, if he's not there, like, could this turn into an ugly slide? I think there's certainly a chance for it. Let's go out east. A team that is on a heater right now is the Carolina Hurricanes. They've won 5 in a row. They're 8-2 in their last 10, Huts. The Carolina Hurricanes are the number 1 cup contender in the Eastern Conference. How do you feel on that one, 1 through 10?
You know what? I hate to say this because Carolina has broke my heart so many times in futures and thinking where they're going to go, but I agree with that. I'm going to go 8. I'm going to go strongly agree in that range. I just think the road to get there for them is going to be less traveled, and I think they can do that. And also what I do believe in is I don't think they're done. Right? When Elliot Friedman the other day talked about Carolina being the other team that was in the Quinn Hughes sweepstakes, it just gives me the idea that they're going to be proactive and they can try to find something. And I just think the road to the Eastern Conference final is going to be easy, not easy, but less strenuous than some other conference as the Atlantic starts to sort itself out. But for me, I'm still worried about Florida and Tampa and the other teams in the Atlantic that could come knocking.
Carolina was my pick last season to make the Stanley Cup final. And I think every year they're kind of that sexy pick that everyone goes, it's finally their year. And it's the old, like, okay, fool me one time, shame on you, fool me twice. Okay, well, Carolina, I feel like, has fooled us 5 or 6 times in the last 5 or 6 years, right? Where we sit there and we go, oh, trust me, they're different this year. And then we get to the playoffs and the same old issues sink them. A goalie gets hurt. They don't have a true game changer up front. And, like, I like Nikolai Ehlers. I don't like Nikolai Ehlers any more than I like Sebastian Aho or Seth Jarvis. You know what I mean? Like, can the depth finally push him there? Maybe. And where I'll come around on the reason I comfortably give the take of, even though they've hurt me in the past and they've made us all look foolish in the past, like, they're the number one cup contender in the East by default, Huts. Who else are we even looking at being like, oh, they got what it takes right now?
Yeah, I think right now when we say that, but if it's so now we're sitting here and we're in the Eastern Conference Final and Carolina's paired up against Tampa Bay. It's paired up against Florida. It's paired even against Toronto. You just start to look at the superstar status of those teams and you're like, head on head in a 7-game series, whose superstars can elevate and win a series for them? It's really, really hard to put Carolina in that group.
All right, let's get out to our big segment. David Pagnotta has been waiting patiently. He's brought to you by Uber Eats. Uber Eats is here to assist every fan's hockey experience all season long. From game day eats to paper plates and napkins, if you're hosting, do all the ingredients you need to make your go-to game day dip. Uber Eats is assisting every fan's hockey experience all season long. David Pagnotta from the Fourth Period and the DFO Rundown Insider Edition joins us every single Thursday. Plenty to get to today with you, but I want to start with our headline story. Rasmus Andersson, the trade market really kicked it into high gear over the last 6 days here. Does that mean Calgary's starting to sniff around? Is the market on Andersson heating up?
It is, in a sense, that teams are reaching out, and not just to Calgary. There are other teams now that Quinn Hughes is out of the mix that are looking to see who could potentially be available. Is it a top 4 guy like Rasmus Andersson? Do we look to San Jose and try to figure out what they're doing with 4 or 5 defensemen on expiring contracts, different type of defensemen? I think they'll be active later on in the season, but this is due diligence time. All right, let's go to plan B, C, and D and see where the options are. And Rasmus Andersson is right at the top of the list. There are a lot of people that don't expect him to stay in Calgary, to sign in Calgary. And quite frankly, I don't know what's changed for him to change that they anticipated. So, yes, teams are calling, teams are circling back. I think Dallas has certainly been one of those teams that are kind of kicking the tires there. We know Toronto has circled back. A few other teams are kicking the tires here to see not only what's the cost going to be to acquire this player, but also is there a chance to sign an extension? And if that's the case, from Calgary's perspective, you get to maximize a return here because you're not just getting Rasmus Andersson for the rest of this season. You're getting him for whatever the duration of that extension is going to be.
Yeah, and that's, he's a bit of a character too, right? So I think that comes into play, right? I've watched him play a few times. Even the other night against San Jose, he's like taking a penalty, throwing the towel on. And I think that's another thing that teams think about is how he's going to fit in a room. And I think about that with the Buffalo Sabres and Jarmo Kekalainen. He's been around enough to get a feel for who these players are and what he has. How long till we see, him? Like, what's his first move in Buffalo here as he takes over the helm?
Yeah, you know what, Hutz? That's a great point because this isn't a guy coming in fresh. He came in the summer. He's already been acclimated. He's well-educated within the organization, the roster, the prospect pool, the everything that they've got in the system, plus the staff off the ice. So this isn't a matter of him coming in and now having to spend the next, 6-8 weeks to evaluate his team. He's already done that. He's been on the ground floor, and he's been across the league. I've seen him in Toronto a bunch of games. He's been across different parts of the conference, trying to get a good hands-on approach to how the rest of the teams out there are looking, not just from a scouting perspective per se, but also just to see what options may be available to him later. It sounds like priority number 1 is Alex Tuch. Figure out exactly what that runway looks like. Is there a pathway to a deal? And by all accounts, and we touched on this earlier on in the season, I mean, my indication was that he's looking at 8 figures on an AAV, so somewhere in that $10 to $11 million range. Is Buffalo comfortable doing that? It didn't sound like they were when Kevin Adams was leading those negotiations. Has anything shifted, and will anything shift with Jarmo? That's what him and Brian Bartlett, Alex Tuch's agent, are going to have to figure out. And then once that's determined one way or another, then it's on to the other, kind of boxes that he's going to have to check. And he mentioned that in his introductory press conference. Goaltending, he wants to get down to 2. Once Ellis is healthy, they got to figure that out. Are there other areas of this team that some teams that had conversations with Adams prior with respect to guys like Bowen Byram, Owen Power, other players on the team, Jordan Greenway, et cetera, are those going to now be reignited in a different manner with Jarmo leading those negotiations? So there's certainly a lot to handle here, but based on what he said, he wants to kind of get things going in short order. First is figuring out Alex Tuch, and then kind of going from there and checking some of those other boxes. But this is expected to be an aggressive approach. I know there's a lot of speculation about Lindy Ruff's future. He's in the final year of his contract. He's the only head coach, to my knowledge, who's on an expiring deal. They don't necessarily have to make that type of move in season. They can kind of wait things out and just see how the season plays out as Jarmo's making those roster adjustments.
Yeah, which I think is going to happen, right? I think there's got to be like a show of faith almost to the fan base, to, where this is heading. And now I switched to another GM that's on a bit of the hot seat in Fitzy and New Jersey Devils, right? They didn't get the Quinn Hughes sweepstakes. Like, what are their moves moving forward now that they're out on Hughes?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, he's not in jeopardy of his job. Tom Fitzgerald. I know that's been really, hyped up in the last little bit, especially within that fan base, because they couldn't get Hughes, and everybody. I get it. You're ticked off, and New Jersey's a very passionate fan base. But he's, even before Quinn Hughes discussions kind of entered the mix, he's been in the market for a top 6 guy, and I'm sure he's pivoted a little bit to kind of reignite those conversations. But he's been linked to the Braden Shens in St. Louis, the usual suspects in Ryan O'Reilly and Steven Stamkos more than anything in Nashville. Now with Stammer, it's interesting because we've got to figure out, the Nashville Predators have to figure out what type of money they're willing to retain, because if they are going to move him, they're going to have to eat some money on that deal, on his $8 million cap hit. But he's somebody that, from a couple months ago, was kind of on New Jersey's radar, at least internally. And those conversations, certainly picked up. And then the focus was, can you get Quinn Hughes? And obviously that didn't happen, with other subsequent moves that had to be made in order to make money work. But those conversations are going to continue. And also the Dougie Hamilton conversation is also going to continue. This is somebody that they had talks with in the offseason about potentially moving. It's carried into this season. We heard some whispers in October, November, that maybe they were looking in that direction as well, or again. And it sounds like that's been part of the equation here also now. So, look, when you lose Jack Hughes out of the lineup, it really proves how valuable he is to that Devil squad. But at the same time, that excuse is an annual thing. So you've got to find other areas on this roster, other guys that are going to step up in his absence. We've seen it in spurts, but not consistently. And addressing that is part of, Fitzgerald's kind of mindset.
I get a little bit of a chuckle, and this is just an observation. Like, Quinn Hughes gets traded. It's a stunner for fans across the league. He goes to Minnesota, and then you hear, Buffalo had it. Like, all these teams we had interest in him. Like, we looked, we tried on it, and I'm sure a lot of it is legit. I'm just maybe a bit of a pessimist with stuff like that. But anyways, the Rangers were one of those teams where it popped up. They're like, hey, no, they had interest in him. They were looking. How legit was that, and how? Was it just interest in Hughes, or are they itching to do something big at some point and bring in a big name?
It definitely, Ty, definitely sounds like that's what they want to do. That they are one of the teams, that are big game hunting, so to speak. I mean, I categorized, Carolina in that mix, and Utah before, and Seattle to an extent, and some of these other clubs that are always in the mix. Montreal as well, always kind of there. It sounds like New York is another one of those teams. And yes, they had legitimate interest in Quinn Hughes. They didn't have the necessary pieces collectively to make something like that happen, or willingness, kind of both sides. It wasn't just one area. But that signifies to me, and talking to other people around the league, that if there is another opportunity to bring in a big fish, and not just anybody, not a guy in his mid-30s, a guy in his mid-20s that you can grow with, it looks like that's what the Rangers would like to do. Doesn't mean they're going to. Doesn't mean they can do that, especially in season. But it definitely signifies that Chris Drury is looking around to see, how do we make an impact type addition that's going to affect our core and be part of the core for a lengthy period of time. So yeah, the interest in Quinn was legit, but I believe, I'm talking to other teams as well, that they're another team to keep an eye on that could be lurking in the weeds to see, how can we make a big addition here? And it sounds like they're willing to move out some of their, significant assets in order to do it. Not all, obviously, but some pieces in order to make an impact trade and affect this roster. Move out talent for talent. You got to pay in order to get. And it sounds like the Rangers, at least on the surface, are one of those teams that are willing to do that, or at least be part of that those conversations when they kind of come up across the league.
Is there a chance that maybe they do something, we'll call it the reverse Mikko Rantanen, where instead of like bringing in a star and flipping him for another package like Carolina did, could they take Panarin, flip him for assets, take those assets, flip the assets for another piece to come into their lineup now? Like, could that be the line of thinking here?
It's a possibility, but that's going to be that's something that's much later on in the season. I think and it would make sense for them to at least explore those possibilities and those options. And I could see right now Johnny Lazarus just going nuts watching this and trying to piece everything together. But this is more likely to be something that occurs later on in the season once the Rangers have a full grasp of where they are in the standings. If they feel they're in a legitimate position or in a playoff spot or a legitimate position to compete for the playoffs down the stretch, then it makes moving Panarin more complicated because you have to weigh the pros and cons. At the same time, you got to figure out, is it realistic to sign him to an extension? And I think those conversations and that possibility are also weighted on just how this team is going to do in the second half of the season. Does it make sense if they're borderline or out of it and feel they can't get Panarin locked into a contract that they like to flip him, to move him, generate those assets, and then potentially, package those pieces for guys that fit that core mindset? Absolutely. But that might be a scenario as well where they move them, collect those assets, and make that type of move around draft time. So with respect to the Rangers and doing something along those lines, a lot of that is going to be dependent on just how the rest of the season plays out leading up to both the Olympic break and then the trade deadline.
Yeah, Laz is going to be in his apartment. Like, I don't know if you're a fan of It's Always Sunny, but that gif of Charlie with like all the strings, it's going to be Laz figuring out, I'll flip Panarin here, and then we'll bring someone else in. Anyways, David, appreciate your time. Thanks for popping on.
You got it. Later, boys.
You and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia guy, Huts?
Oh, yeah. I'm the wild card, baby. I love it. It's one of the best shows ever.
It's so good. I went down. There was one of those things. I mean, it's an algorithm, so of course it'd pop up for me. But my Twitter was flooded with like all-time clips. The one when Charlie and Mac are going and they're gonna like drive their car into a wall to like get the insurance or whatever they were doing. He smokes the brick wall. I was dying laughing at that one. Anyways, we'll move on from that. J-Rock has a question. He said, #askDFO Huts. How much did playoff experience teach you how to elevate your games and things of that nature? And do you think it's actually a benefit for some of these young teams? Like, I'll elaborate on the question a bit. Like a San Jose and a Chicago. How much value is there in those teams maybe adding and pushing hard to get in the playoffs so they can give their young kids some experience?
It's huge. It's so valuable to gain that experience. And again, it's something that like, I feel like the outside fan or someone watching, you don't really feel it necessarily because you go to an NHL game, you feel how intense it is, but it's not sustainable to like play that way throughout a whole year. But then when you get to playoffs, everything is magnified. Every puck battle, every icing, every face-off, every single play, there's like just the added intensity that's brought to it. And so I think it teaches a younger player how to play in those moments and how to be just totally aware of your situation where you can't take a shift off. You can't take a stride off. You can't take a moment off if you want to try to win a series, because that one shift you take off or that one turnover could change the whole destiny of a series. So I think that's where the experience becomes so important, where throughout an 82 game season, you check out at points, right? It's just like, man, we don't have it tonight. We're down 3-1. Who cares, right? And you hate to hear that, but it's the honest truth.
We got another one that asked about Blake Coleman in Calgary, and we didn't have time to get to this with Dave, and obviously like Blake Coleman's not Quinn Hughes, and Quinn Hughes is different, but he went for so much, and everyone's applauding the return that Vancouver was able to get. And I'd be curious if in the aftermath of like seeing what Quinn Hughes went for, if teams like Calgary, who have a Coleman who has term, who have a Kadri who has term, if they're not sitting there being like, okay, if buyers are willing to pay this much, and if Minnesota has maybe kicked off some sort of an arms race in the Western Conference with those big three teams in the Central and the teams in the Pacific that'll have to some extent, try to keep pace with them, I wonder if we don't see, after the holiday freeze, but like early January, a bunch of teams go, you know what? We were debating selling. We're seeing what the prices are now. We're fully jumping in on this.
Yeah, because the market changes a bit, right? And especially in the West, where now it becomes this race to get where you need to go. And the timeline shifts, right, Ty? So it's not like we're waiting till a free agency period or an actual trade deadline to make this move. Now you don't want to be sitting there holding the bag either, right? Like, I have these picks, I have these players we want to move off of, and next thing you know, they make a deal with somebody in the East or somebody in your division to acquire some picks, right? We talked about Coleman's name, Andersson, Kadri. Calgary's obviously potentially one of those teams that are going to be the sellers. Look at Vancouver and Sherwood. You don't want to be caught as a team that is the buyer, where maybe that is the difference of pushing you over the top to get into a second round, to get into a conference final, where the returns from the gate and from everything else that comes with playoff success kind of value, it adds a lot of value. So again, I think the market is changing. And right now, a lot of these teams are still in it.
All right, let's get to our daily bets for Bet365. We begrudgingly get to our daily bets for Bet365 because Pat Puff is the only one who has a check mark next to his name. He has moved into the positives. This is, listen, this is not a challenge where anyone should feel great about themselves, but Pat, you deserve to feel the least bad.
It's starting to feel good. Yeah, I wonder if part of it's just the league's starting to right itself a little bit. There were some teams that shouldn't be winning, and now some teams that should be winning are starting to win, but most of it's probably just luck, if I'm being honest. But it feels nice, not going to lie.
Well, I wish I was lucky, Pat. I'm looking at me. I get the Florida game, right? We knocked that one out. And then Winnipeg gives up one goal with Hellebuck, and they can't even find the net. We talked about a bad St. Louis goaltending bin. Joel Hofer, good for him, though. Let's back to the drawing board.
I have a Hofer take in a second, but we'll get to our picks for tonight. For Bet365, download the app today. Use the promo code NATION, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. I like this number at 5.5 between the Hawks and Canadians, just because the Canadians' offense has been moving at such a good rate. They played Edmonton. They found a way to score 4. Like, if you look over the course of the last 10 games in the NHL, Montreal's had some where, like, they've really popped off. This number's set at 5.5. I'm taking the over between Chicago and Montreal. Philly, Buffalo's the other one where I really like the over of 6 there. Philly's a top 10 offense over their last 10 games as well. So give me 2 overs at plus 236. Pat, what do you got?
Well, I've been trying to keep it simple, but now that I have a little bit of wiggle room, I'm going for a bit of a parlay here. But I guess a simple parlay, if you will, because Edmonton's starting to heat up. They got a new goalie. Minnesota's heating up. They got Quinn Hughes. They've won 5 in a row. And Dallas taking on San Jose. I mean, Dallas is the second best team in the league. San Jose's still kind of young and working their way up. So at plus 371, I like Edmonton over Boston, Minnesota over Columbus, and Dallas over San Jose. What about you, Hutz?
The Patty Puff parlay. I'm going to keep that rolling, buddy. I'm going with the Edmonton Oilers money line, so we're in that together. And then I'm taking the Montreal Canadiens at home against the Chicago Blackhawks. And then we just talked about them. We just bashed them. I'm taking the Tampa Bay Lightning and the LA Kings to lose. LA, stay slow, baby. Don't score on me tonight.
I mean, if what usually happens on this show rings true, the LA Kings, after we roast their offense, they're going to score fucking 7 tonight, Hutz, and it'll just be ridiculous. But let's get to our garbage time for the day to wrap things up. Hutz, you actually unearthed this one. A little troll job of a T-shirt out in Winnipeg for the game between the Blues and the Jets that reminded the Blues exactly how their season ended last year.
Like, who thinks this T-shirt up, right? Like, this is unbelievable. Like, it has, like, the passing play of where the puck went, the players, and then they're even numbered, like, the Blues player. You see Parenko and Binnington in front of the net, 55 and 50. I just thought this was so creative. And I remember there used to be a place in Nashville right on Broadway, right outside of Bridgestone Arena. This guy would sell T-shirts like this. And I remember mine was like it was a background of a goalie, and then it said, "I like big huts and I cannot lie." And he always had like funny shirts. It was really good. He couldn't have the NHL logo on or the Predators logo, but these creative T-shirts were great.
That is good. So here's my Joel Hofer take. There's a lot of talk about who's going to be Canada's goaltending at Four Nations, and it's very clear that Joel Hofer has overtaken the crease from Jordan Binnington. How is there a case or an argument for Doug Armstrong to take Jordan Binnington to the Olympics this spring or in February he's far and away the worst Canadian goalie on his own team. Like, he has lost the starting job in St. Louis to Joel Hofer. Joel Hofer is also Canadian. How are we talking about Jordan Binnington, who's been putrid this year, still in the Olympic conversation when he's the second best Canadian goalie on his own damn team?
I know, yeah, it is kind of crazy, and it is tough to sit there and listen to everything that goes into the process when he isn't good, but it's based on merit, right? I think he alone gets in on that, and it's tough to swallow. I get it from that standpoint. It will be funny because he started 4 of the last 5 games for the St. Louis Blues, and he's 2-1 in his last, and a team that's not very good. It's ugly. I just think at this point it's Logan Thompson's job, and then it is going to be whoever else they bring with him. I think Binnington makes it in that, and then the argument would be Kuemper or Mackenzie Blackwood, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you on that front. Montembeault, Aiden Hill, no shot. I just looked up since November 18th. It's December 18th today, obviously. So in the last 30 days, Joel Hofer has a 922. Jordan Binnington has an 869. Crazy. Anyways, I digress. J-Rock, our resident Blues fan in the chat, he talked about that shirt. He said, I could not hate that shirt more. Well done to whoever made that. I want to throw up. I thought that was a good line. That's a wrap on today's edition of the show. Tomorrow, TJ Oshie's going to swing by for a Friday edition of things. Enjoy your Thursday, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow at noon Eastern. Hey, hockey fans, if you enjoyed that video, then make sure you hit the subscribe button right here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. We have you covered for everything you need. Exclusive interviews on The Sheet with Jeff Merrick, all the latest hockey news on Daily Faceoff Live, and you can always get your morning started with Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohn on Morning Cup of Hockey. Don't miss a minute. Hit that subscribe button.